my presentation is going to be in the main conceptual. That is, I'm going to consider what the concept of raga and what is the concept of creativity and how the two can go together. And then specifically in the context of Khayal, what can we possibly mean by creativity, given the concepts of raga and creativity in general. So it's an exploration of the conceptual lay, as it were. So I'm going to make a fundamental, I'm going to try and show that creativity in the context of raga, talk of creativity in the context of raga poses a fundamental problem because of what raga is. Raga is grounded in a grammar, in a framework of rules. If creativity is creation of something new and valuable and exemplary, that is one of the favorite definitions of creativity, that it's a creation of new, not just something that is new, but it's also valuable in the tradition. Now this sort of thing, this kind of creativity of something new, is it valued in Khayal or in raga music in general? Khayal is seen as providing great scope for creativity. Dr. Ashok Ranade has suggested that it might be a mistake to equate improvisation with creativity. We have a lot of improvisation, of course, but is that creativity? If it is, in what sense is it creativity? Variation is an aspect of most music and also raga music. Khayal offers immense possibilities for such variation, especially by engaging actively with the tal. And Pandit Deshpande demonstrated it so brilliantly earlier today. And as for radical creativity, in the sense of creating something new within a raga, I suggest that instead of looking for novelty in the music itself, we might turn our attention towards how it is experienced. A phenomenological approach, if I may so say. And I will look for some ideas from Alankara Shastra here. My thesis was on Alankara Shastra. So. Now Khayal, what is Khayal? Khayal is presentation of raga, that's what it is.
Alankara Shastra in literature. Alankara Shastra.
Alankara Shastra is concerned with literature, theatre, literature. But there are general ideas of beauty and of which can be applied to music, not all of it, but some of it is quite applicable. So Khayal is essentially presentation of a raga. That's what it is. So the first question is, what is raga? How do we talk of it? What does the idea of raga entail or involve? Now every raga, as I said, is associated with a framework of rules, with a grammar. It can only take some syntax and some vocabulary. We have only some swaras, some notes admitted in each raga, and certain ways of combining them, giving emphasis to some notes, not de-emphasize some notes, everything. There is a host of subtle nuances to every raga, which are essentially absorbed. They are not written down. They can't be written. You can't exhaustively list the grammar of a raga, for instance. It is absorbed in practice, by listening, in practice by learning from a guru and so on. So Joab Bor, for instance, he is defined. So how do you define raga? Raga is often defined as a framework of rules. Bor has defined it as a tonal framework for composition and improvisation. And others, mostly Western scholars, and that is the reality that we do refer a lot to Western writers on Indian music, because there's a certain kind of approach there that appeals to some of us, especially those educated in the universities, and there may be some problem there. So if you talk of raga as a tonal framework, it's a framework of rules. Is that how a practitioner of music thinks of a raga? When I think of Yaman, do I think of the rules? We don't. We think of the raga swarupa. That is important for us. the framework of rules is of course there. It can never, we can't deny it. But that's not the fundamental way of being of a raga, of how the community of practitioners experiences raga, thinks about raga. It is a swarupa, it has a form, which might manifest itself if you stick to the grammar. It is not necessary. With the very first phrase, the raga might manifest itself, or it might not. After much plodding about, even if you are grammatically correct, the raga will not manifest itself. So, these aspects of how raga is perceived, thought of in the tradition, we have to, I think, keep in mind. What is Raga Swarupa? I will come to that a little later. I have some suggestions. So Raga is also definitely associated with grammar, it's undeniable, but the primary way we experience Raga is not as a framework of rules. So now, a few aspects of Raga that problematize talk of creativity is that if indeed there is a set of rules that governs performance of a raga, what kind of creativity can we expect? What kind of creativity is possible or indeed desirable? Do we want novel phrases in a raga? Is it possible? If every raga demands adherence to lakshana, raga lakshana as it is called, grammatical rules, subtler rules of inflection, of ornamentation, phrasal rules, etc., then the possibility or indeed the desirability of creativity is questionable. And it is held by many in the tradition. Traditional performers, my own guru for instance, Carnatic ace violinist, he says creativity, improvisation and all is humbug. It's not that anything new is created. Now, the other issue is that one learns, trains, and this is true of any music. One learns, one trains, one practices, one puts in those 10,000 hours. How does this impact creativity? Do we come up with something new, really? There is the behaviorist view, for instance, would say that everything is explicable in terms of your genetic makeup and what you have been exposed to environmentally. You may not be exactly able to trace every little thing to something that you have been exposed to, but the position is that in essence, it is possible. So, Vides, for instance, says, a number of studies have suggested that improvisation in Indian classical music is less spontaneous than it appears to be and is almost always reliant on extensive memorized materials and procedures. And he has quoted those studies. I did not look at them, but I want to say that even within the tradition, creativity as such is not explicitly given prime importance. Other parameters of form, proportion, we say it has to be well formed. The phrases have to be well formed. In Carnatic music especially, the pidi, it has to be well formed, delivered well. So also in Hindustani music, Raga Chaya are seen as more important than creativity. The artist's creativity in the sense of going to new places is not always seen as a critical parameter for assessing her music. If the creativity is all over the place, without considerations of form, proportion, raga lakshana, you're just using the notes of the swara, and that happens. We have this myth of Narada Muni. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. For those who are not familiar, I'll just recount this myth. And myths are important. They capture important ideas of the community. So Narada Muni is very proud of his musical prowess and he has been belting ragas and raginis for some time. And then he is a Triloka Sanchari. He moves across the worlds, he travels, trying to foment trouble here and there, and then he comes across these strange looking creatures. They are distorted and they are lying on the ground, writhing in pain. So he asks them, who are you and why are you like this? What happened to you? So they say that we are ragas and raginis. You know, there is this Narada Muni, he has been singing us, so to say, without respect for our form, the Raga Swarupa. And we are reduced to this state. So Narada Muni is stricken with guilt and he asks, well, I am the guilty person, so what can I do to restore you? And they say, we have to be performed properly. Only if you are performed properly can we be restored. And who is the person to do it? Lord Shiva. And Shiva, we must remember, is an ascetic. He's a tapasvi. So that kind of a mental makeup, kind of restraint, is what is required to handle the material, the raga material. So this Narada Muni myth is reenacted in our times every now and then. In Carnatic music, for instance, we have been an amazingly gifted musician who is very imaginative, but the kind of musical output that he gives leaves many of us quite exhausted and dismayed, because Raga Swarupa is a casuality. So what I'm trying to say is, when we speak of creativity, in Hindustani music again, Pandit Deshpande was referring to Patiala Gharana this morning. Some contemporary performers of Patiala Gharana would probably, be our Narada Munis today. So this is probably why creativity is underplayed in the tradition. Now, always helpful, even necessary, to look at our own languages to see how we talk of it. In Hindustani music, we talk of pratibha. Creativity, we talk of, the word we use is pratibha. In Carnatic music, we use the word manodharma. Though manodharma is also used for the improvisational aspects also. So alap, neravel, etc. are also called a manodharma. The faculty of the musician is also called manodharma. Anyway, the point is, speaking of Khayal, I really want to put this question to you. How many musicians of this, that is top-ranking musicians, very visible musicians, how many musicians of this age or the past age do we speak of having pratibha? That is the question. So, most other musicians, many other top-ranking musicians, they offer us sound music, good music. Creativity plays a subservient role. An artist might, on the other hand, offer fairly predictable music with little spark. But if it's sound on principles of form and content, we do value it. And I believe many of the top-ranking musicians are of this kind. The competent musicians are still acceptable, I would say. Whereas the musician who lets his imagination run unbridled is not. The greatest musicians, however, manage both creativity and adherence to expectations of tradition, and they inevitably push boundaries. So I have tried to problematize or even draw your attention to the fact, to the importance that creativity as such is given in the tradition itself. And I suggest that explicitly, no guru tells him to be creative, no, figure out a new phrase there. No, we don't do that. Variation is there, to which I'll come. 2:30 already. So now what is creativity? I'm quoting Albert Rothenberg. Creativity is not synonymous with originality, productivity, spontaneity, good problem solving, or craftsmanship, although the term is often used interchangeably with these. Creations are products that are both new and valuable. Creativity is a capacity or state that brings forth such creations. A painter may be original. He may be original but uncreative. So the Narada Munis are very original, but it is not the kind of creativity that we value. A literary scholar may be productive, even prolific, but notably uncreative. A spontaneous person may produce conventional poems spontaneously. Computers as well as scientists provide good but uncreative solutions to problems. The skilled craftsman might replicate great works of art but never be able to create one of his own. So creativity is the creation of something that is new and is seen as valuable, something that is exemplary in the sense of being worthy of an example that people will follow. Immanuel Kant has said that the genius sets rules for art. He gives the rules for art. Now what is the place of this sort of creativity in Khayal that is new and valuable, exemplary, or even other raga music? We talk of improvisation in the context of Khayal, also Carnatic music, or Drupad, and this is generally regarded the ground for creativity. When one sings alap or bolband, that is creative, is the general opinion. Dr. Ashok Ranade has suggested that while we do speak of improvisation in the context of raga music, it is not quite creativity. I quote, "The role of improvisation in Indian music has been both misinterpreted and exaggerated, chiefly because improvisation has been unnecessarily and rather prematurely equated with creativity. A historical reason for overemphasis of this role has been the operations of 19th century nationalism, which followed apparently contradictory strategies of glorifying the non-Occidental, that is, we are creative, we have great improvisation, and also trying to emulate the Occidental. The century busily extolled improvisation but repeatedly tried to evolve comprehensive notation systems, etc., to create the definitive and the written alap following the Western vogue." When we present a khayal, what is it that we actually do? What are the various aspects to it? First of all, there is sur and laya. Sur sambhalna padta hai, lay ko bhi sambhalna padta hai. Both should be internal workings, inner workings. The tanpura is an external reference, of course. The tabla gives you the laya, but it has to stem from something inside. It has to be an inner alignment, an inner absorption. And I'll come later on to my suggestion that is when creativity, in the sense it is valued in the tradition, is possible. We are also engaging with the raga and tala. We work with the composition, bandish, aspects of badhat or vistar. We have ala, boltan, tan, etc., the works. We engage constantly with the tradition, raga swarupa, the tala vartan, mukhra, sam, etc., gharana stylistics. We are not deliberately trying to be creative. That is not something we are, thinking about and doing in terms of figuring out new phrases. We seek variation, of course, as I said. Variation is all the time happening. We don't, for instance, want to repeat the same phrase around the madhyam of Kedar. We seek different ways of coming to madhyam. That is there. That is variation. Or if we sing the first line of the bandish again and again, each time there are small and big variations. But variation is like tinkering. Is there more to creativity than variation? Can we talk of something more in the context of raga music than this kind of variation that's there? Of course, some musicians are more brilliant at variation, like we heard Pandit Deshpande today, he was simply brilliant, and some people are more labored at variation. That is there. But do we seek to be creative in a more sense? A jazz performer, on the other hand, is under great pressure to do something different each time he plays. To be creative in the sense of coming up with something different. The melodic movements, how he negotiates the chord changes. He's under pressure to do something different. I don't believe we are under the same kind of pressure. The demands of sur, laya, raga and tala are more dominant. The cognitive aspect of the raga is central to us. A well-known, common phrase, delivered with sensitivity and absorption, captures the Raga Swarupa more than an acrobatic display. Original swara, original movements maybe, an acrobatic display of virtuosity aimed at dazzling audiences. Now that a phrase which evokes the Raga Swarupa, that is of greater value to us. Now what is Raga Swarupa? I have 10 more minutes? Okay. So I'm going to suggest, I've been talking about Raga Swarupa as if it's the most normal thing and the most something that I can talk about like that. The reason why we talk of Raga in terms of framework of rules is because it's easier to talk of it like that. When we say Raga Swarupa, it's some ghostly thing. But I think an important aspect of what we mean by Raga Swarupa is that we are able to perceive, when you sing a phrase and you perceive that yes, it is Kedar, or you perceive that it is Des and not Tilak Kamud, that sort of thing. That cognition, you're able to perceive the Raga, that is the manifestation of the Raga Swarupa. So essentially, I believe there is the element of a cognition involved there. The listener also seeks to expand his knowledge of the cognitive aspect. So knowledgeable listeners are accorded great respect in our tradition. This communication of the cognitive aspect of the Raga bears similarities with use of language. Parallels between language and music, language and Raga have been explored by many. But in collaboration with another interested scholar, semi-scholar like me, one Vidya Jayaraman, we have presented these parallels in terms of drawing ideas from Indian knowledge traditions, Indian discussions of language, issues of language in Sanskrit traditions. It's relevant here because when we speak of the process of Khayal presentation or a Carnatic Raga Alapana, this is something that has to be taken care of at all times. The Raga Swarupa, the cognition of the Raga, whatever you may do, the Raga Swarupa has to be there. And we look at it and it's very easy to destroy it. Not for seasoned musicians, but when you're setting out for the rookie, it happens all the time. Now, we have called it Raga Bodha because knowledge that is conveyed by language is called Shabda Bodha, so we have called it Raga Bodha. A musical performance of a Raga is primarily judged for its capacity. Fundamentally, this has to be there to give a clear picture of the Raga. Phrases must be well formed and not ambiguous between Ragas. If you hear something and you're wondering, is it Meg or is it Matsarang or is it Tilak Kamud or Des, then it is not good. It's not a good performance. Cognition arises, so that's what I said. So we have called this Raga Bodha. And one of the fundamental things that we have argued is that it is phrases and not notes that are primary units of this Raga Bodha. And we have drawn parallels with the Sphota theory of the Vaiyakaranas. I won't go into that, just that for this, whatever I'm going to say, it's the phrases that I'll be talking about. And another useful concept that developed in this tradition and which I think can be applied to understand Raga is the concept of Akanksha. Akanksha is translated as expectancy, or to give the stock example in these traditions, the Sanskrit traditions, is Gam Anaya, bring the cow. So the word Gam is not just cow, but cow in the accusative position, that cow is an object. Gam Anaya, bring the cow. So if you say Gam and then something else, maybe Phalam, both cow in the accusative sense and fruit in the accusative sense, it cannot convey Shabda Bodha. So a fundamental condition for Shabda Bodha or for cognition through language to occur is that each word completes the other. each pada, I should not say word, pada, each pada should complete the other. So Gam as such has an akanksha, an expectancy for a kriya pada, for a verb. Now in music, in raga, if you sing a phrase of Yaman, that phrase seeks completion with another or 2 or 3 other phrases. And that alone kind of gives a complete picture of this raga swarupa. What happens in the case of one possibility of creativity? And in the raga, of course, if you sing a phrase, there are there's a large number of phrases that can follow it and complete the raga swarupa and give you a proper cognition of Yaman. But there are at least some phrases which, if you sing after dhani, it will leave you bewildered. Raga bodha will not happen. Now, one way that creativity can happen in raga music is, and this happens with our most creative musicians, that they forge links between such unlikely combinations. So that's one way that akanksha can be used to try and understand how creativity is possible. And there is another kind of akanksha, and this is what we call cognitive expectancy, the structural expectancy. When you go to a concert, there are any number of expectations, right? You expect that the singers, musicians come dressed in a certain way, and you expect some things. But when the presentation unfolds, generally, given the certain tradition, whatever it is, it's Carnatic or Khayal or Drupad, you have a certain expectancy of how the concert is going to unfold. So all that comes under structural expectancy. So in Khayal, for instance, we have generally expectation of Ashtanga. Right? You sing the bandish, vilambit, and then you have alap, bol, etc., the build-up of the raga. Now, this is something that has been questioned by Pandit Kumar Gandharva and others also. And in Carnatic music also, the general paddhati of presentation has also, I have heard of T.R. Subramaniam starting a concert with a tilana, which is quite unheard of. How the concert unfolds. So these are all part of expectancies. Of course, T.M. Krishna was here earlier. He is constantly questioning this way of unfolding the concert. But within the performance itself, forget the ordering and all that, but within the performance itself, how the alap is structured, for instance. Alapana in Carnatic music is structured. There are some expectancies. And if the artist can creatively thwart those expectancies and do something different, that is another way we value creativity. And in Khayal, of course, and that is actually what would be under variation. In Khayal, the most, the most fertile ground for such variation is how you build the avartan, take the mukhra, and show the sum. That is, find it where variation is possible there, and there you're all the time playing with expectancy, with akanksha. You expect that the musician will weave his way to the mukhada and pick it up and show the sum, and how he surprises you, and how he does it in very creative ways. That is part of the excitement of Khayal. But here, so to sum up, I think I've spoken of expectancy and creativity in raga. There are two ways. One is the cognitive expectancy, the other is structural expectancy. Akanksha, the expectancy that is particularly exciting in the case of Khayal, is the build-up, avartan build-up, taking the mukhada and showing the sum. Now I'm going to play and see here creativity or variation. Creativity itself, we can talk of it as two kinds. There is rule-governed creativity. That is what most variation is like that. So you sing an alap, you sing a bandish and then some alap, take the mukhda and show the sum. This is all rule-governed. It may be different, maybe varied ways of doing it, but we are bound by the rules of the raga, of the tala, of the words, some gharana stylistics, etc. So this is rule-governed creativity. Now we are interested in rule-forming creativity, something that is different, that is creative, and it goes just beyond these rules, challenging them a little, and yet the raga swarupa is not destroyed. That sort of creativity is what I am focused on here. So I'm going to play two clips without meaning any disrespect to the artist. One is Pandit Kumar Gandharva and the other is Srimati Ashwini Bhede. Both are singing the same composition in Miya Malhar, Bolare Papi Hara. I would seriously like a discussion on this aspect of expectancy and how these two clips, how they impact us because of the expectancies that are generated in us and how it is resolved or not, or some surprise resolution is affected. And I'm sorry, this is only possible for people who are knowledgeable, who know what is happening. So I'll first play Kumar Gandharva, Pandit Kumar Gandharva. So, any responses from here? If there was anything, the tans, brilliant as expected. Once you know Kumarji's style, even that becomes expected, though if whatever he sings, it is unexpectedly surila and just on the dot. But for me, today, earlier this morning, Satyeshilji Panditji was talking about the Tivra Nishad, the Shuddha Nishad in Miya Malhar, and how it is just used as a launching pad to just arrive at the Sa. Now, in this, he has stopped on Tivra Nishad, right? Sa, ni, da, ni. That ni, dha, ni, sa, ni, the pitch is not, the ni, dha, ni, sa, ni, without ni, dha, ni, this is more common. This is what we expect, right? Whereas he sang Tivra Nishad, Dhaivat and Tivra Nishad, which is actually not rule governed. In the sense, it is not how Mia Malhar is normally sung. The descent to the Dhaivata is from Komal Nishad. But he has descended from Tivra Nishad, or we can just say Ni, Dhani. It may sound, you can say that it is an ascent from Dha to Ni. I mean, these are all hair-splitting things. But my point is, the more common thing to do is Komal Nishad, Dhaivat and Shuddha Nishad. He has done it. Shuddha Nishad, Dhaivat, Shuddha Nishad. And the most important thing for me is there is no Raga Bhanga. It sounds just as Mia Malhar as anything else. And the other thing that I found extremely ahladajanaka for me was when he stops on Ni and then he takes the mukhada at the pancham, right? Whereas I was expecting that he will go to the sa. You hold the Ni for so long, the normal expectation, the akanksha, is that you go and hit the sa. He just didn't do that, and he just came to the pancham, which in the hands of a lesser musician would have sounded terrible. But he does it without any loss to Raga Bhanga, to the Raga. Now that is actually mystifying how it happens and how this has happened, and I don't have answers to that. But this is a kind of, creativity that is possible in Raga music. Now the other clip that I'm going to play is Srimati Ashwini Bide. She is singing the same bandish. So this was a very different way of generating akanksha, but it was strictly rule governed. There was no going out of the raga rules as such. And she was using the words of the Sahitya in a more romantic way. Bolere, that sort of thing, which is also, part of Khayal rendition. So, to kind of, I'm winding up here. I've suggested that while there are basic conceptual issues surrounding possibility and desirability of creativity in raga music, the fact is that we have had and continue to have brilliant musicians who are also seen, who are also there, although like any good thing, they are rare. Variation is found extensively in Khayal performances. The quality of such variation is, of course, different. Generating and resolving expectancies, first of the raga swarupa, it's of the cognitive aspect of raga and the presentational aspects. These I think, form the core of creativity in Raga music. And then, how about creation of a completely new phrase, a new melodic movement in, say, Yaman? And I would think what Kumarji did is kind of new. At least, of course, Panditji says it's the older version of Yaman. They had this kind of emphasis of nishad, but Nidhani, that sort of phrase, to me at least, it's quite novel. But the question is, apart from that particular instance, in general, can one not claim that radical creativity is possible in Khayal? That is, don't brilliant musicians come up with novel phrases or novel movements, original movements in ragas, which are also exemplary? What I want to say is that, first of all, this is unverifiable. To say that this particular phrase has never been sung before and he sang it, in principle, it's unverifiable. There's no way of knowing that it has never been sung before ever. And the more important thing for me is that it is not important. It is not important for us whether that phrase is completely original. What matters is not whether the phrase being produced is being produced for the first time ever, but how it appears. That it appears new and fresh. It should not be like the musician is laboring and thinking, okay, now I have to sing this phrase or now I have to sing that phrase. How it appears to us. That is of crux in raga music. The Alankarikas, the Alankara Shastra tradition, is a very rich tradition of speculation on literary excellence. Now, they have extensively talked about and debated about the aesthetic experience, the experience of literature, of rasa is one of the very important concepts that they have developed. But they have very little to say actually about creativity. But there is a story of the Adi Kavya, which is interesting and kind of illuminating for us here. See, Adi Kavya is the first ever verse. That is, in the tradition, it is believed that Valmiki had just been told the story of Rama by Narada, I think, I don't remember. Narada had just told him the story, and he was thinking about it, engrossed in the story and walking in the forest, and he sees a pair of crauncha birds. They are mating, they are in love, and he is just immersed in that very beautiful sight. The scene is so perfect. And suddenly from nowhere, a hunter shoots one of the birds. And that it is that the happy union is destroyed. And Valmiki utters what is regarded in the tradition as the Adi Kavya. Ma nishada pratishtham tvamagama shashvatihi samaha yat krauncha mithunad ekam avadhihi kama mohitam. This is regarded as the first ever verse, poetic verse in the Sanskrit tradition. It is traditionally regarded as the first verse. Now, what is so poetic about this? That's the question. Why is it regarded as poetry? Because then there is an explanation itself that Valmiki just steps back in astonishment at his own creation. And he says, Kim idam vyahritam maya. What is this that has come out of me? What is it that I have said just now? And he says, Shokaha shlokatvam agataha. So my pathos, the sorrow that I felt at the sight of the crauncha bird being killed, has been transformed into this shloka. Now, that is regarded as, in one school, very, very, very prominent school of Alankara Shastra, they regard that is the best way of poetry. That everything has to proceed from the emotion, the rasa of the poet. Simply using some clever poetic devices, some alliteration, some endlessly long compound words, or just description of some scene, some maybe sunrise or sunset, which has been on the emotive content of the poem as such. That is dismissed by the school of Alankarakas. So, now in music, I want to say the same thing. That here I'm not talking of rasa. I'm aware that Satyashin ji is here. You won't like talk. No, but I'm not even talking of rasa here. I'm talking of raga. The raga, you are immersed in the ragas, what you have experienced of the raga and how you think the raga should sound, and you're singing. That immersion itself brings out music that will sound fresh and new. And here again, I want to quote from the Alankarikas. They say, Drishtapurva api hyartah kavye rasaparigrahat sarve nava iva bhanti. Sarve nava iva bhanti madhumase iva drumaha. That is, if it proceeds, even if it is a very commonplace description in the poem, in the kavya, in a mahakavya or whatever, even if it is a very commonplace description, if it proceeds from the rasa, or it goes to nourish the rasa, sarve nava iva bhanti, that everything appears fresh. And the metaphor here is just, I think, quite brilliant. They say, madhumase iva drumaha, like flowers in spring. Now, spring brings flowers. A rose is a rose, a champaka is a champaka. It has the same form, texture, color, etc. But every time it blooms, every flower appears fresh and lovely. So also, even a well-worn phrase of Yaman, or Kedar, or Mia Milhar, if it is presented in a certain attitude or a certain orientation of the mind, I would say, that is when it appears fresh, and that is of value for us. Not some original phrase. So the dhani rega of Yaman is the same, but can bring joy each time when delivered with that quality. Now, what brings this quality? And here I'm a little... a part of the answer, and an important part, is that it is a state of mind of the artist, of absorption, which is focused, yet it's free in a sense. Carl Rogers, for instance, talks of this as extensionality, which is the opposite of psychological defensiveness. When, to protect the organization of the self, certain experiences are prevented from coming into awareness except in a distorted fashion. In a person who is open to experience, each stimulus is freely relayed without being distorted by any process of defensiveness. Instead of perceiving in predetermined categories like trees are green, or modern art is silly, or this is my own, or I think I must sing that Gandhar now, or that Tan that I have practiced, without thinking like this. The individual is aware of this existential moment as it is, being alive to many experiences that follow outside the usual categories. It means lack of rigidity and permeability of boundaries in concepts, beliefs, perception, and hypotheses. It means a tolerance for ambiguity, where ambiguity exists. The truth of performance of raga is that there is a great deal of defensiveness, of anxiety, all of which prevents extensionality, as Rogers calls it. The mind of the performer, while engaging with the music, is also observing, and most often it is judging, so that each musical moment appears to the performer shrouded in this cloak of judgment. When the observing mind is quietened and one is able to engage with each moment in its stark being, that itself leads the musician on to the next musical moment, and true creativity is possible. Everything appears fresh. Elsewhere, I have suggested that it's like the persona is split into two, like the two Upanishadic birds. I'm not giving an interpretation of the Upanishad, just using that allegory that the first one eats while the other one observes dispassionately as an observer. So also the musician performs. One part of the persona is performing, and that demands deep involvement. The first bird enjoys the fruit, finds it delicious, But the musician is also a dispassionate observer, not letting ideas of self into the picture, not judging, not hurrying or conforming for the sake of conforming or questioning for the sake of questioning or being creative for the sake of being creative, but letting each musical moment lead her to the next one. Some musicians call this a state of sahaja. Thank you.
It was quite pertinent to whatever I had said about Mia Mallar, those two clips that you played, that Shuddha Nishad aspect. Now, being too familiar with Kumarji and in his Sohbat, I felt that Kumarji is going back to his impressions of Vazebua, who has given this 78 RPM, and Kumarji was very fond of his music, like Omkarnath Thakur. So I found it that novelty together with the essence of parampara that is carrying. Thank you.